So, guys, I had this feeling that like everything changes around us, and it's happening very, very fast, and it's all changing. But you know, over the course of the last 20 years, the way how we digest culture is a completely different way that we did it, you know, back 15, 20 years ago. So. I mean, most of you guys probably reading books over Kindle right now than using the paper, and you know, and that goes beyond, like, you know, that goes around the whole sort of sector of culture. And like, if you look at the museums today, I mean, you know, they look nothing like they looked 20 years ago, because you know, this is the museum that we've seen, like, you know, 15, 20 years ago when I was back in primary school. You know, whereas today it's sort of more like this, and you know, it's sort of more of an experience, and you know, just this crazy open spaces with something that you can interact with, and you know, and have fun with, and you know, that's a good thing. It's like, you know, we don't notice those changes, but really, like, if you look at it, like, this change didn't really took a long time. So like, over the course of the last 20 years, I'm saying, but really, if you look at the whole industry, it's more like maybe, you know, 5 to 10 years really where we see those things happening. So the same goes for the films revolving around history. If you look at the films revolving around history and how we used to communicate, you know, the stuff about our heroes in the different countries, and like, you know, wars, not wars, and whatnot. You know, we used to look at things more of this sort, right? So like, you know, like happy fellas, you know, having chill on the sun, and you know, those guys. This was like a typical thing that everybody liked to watch in front of the blockbuster when they went to the movies back in you know, in the 50s and probably 60s as well, right after the wars. And today we're gonna talk about how this approach changed, because what we're doing now it definitely looks more like this, and this is how we today speak about those stories. So as I say, like, you know, everything seemed to change, and we're gonna be trying to tell you about this change and figure out, you know, the positive sides of it and the negative sides of it. And why we're discussing this topic, because it's not a very popular topic, but why we're discussing this topic. And it sort of brings me to the next point. And my next point is that we're from Poland. And I know Natalia is already laughing, but there's this thing that we use whenever we go on speeches on different continents. So whenever we go to Asia, or like, you know, the US or whatnot, like, I'm always saying, hey, we are Poland, and this is, Poland is having this very unique geographical, you know, place in the whole world. So we're right in between of Germany and Russia, and you know, that's not a very good place to be unless you really want to see from the front row all the worldwide conflicts taking place. So this is where we are. Although obviously there's some positive sides to it. You know, like I always like to say that one leg we're in Russia, so like, you know, we're competitive and, you know, reasonable price, and then left leg is in Germany, so we're trying to be professional and, like, you know, doing stuff on time and stuff. So, so this also have its positive side. Although, like, here, you know, we're in Europe, we're not so far away from Bulgaria, like 2 or 3 countries away from here. So, so you know, so this is a little bit throw the monkey wrench in the whole program, because this is what I'm usually talking about. So if we look at the world map also in terms of the post-production companies, like, you have those huge, nice, big players like, you know, Digital Domain, for example, The Mill, ILM, and, you know, some of the people are actually here, like, speaking on the other you know, venues, and this is probably where all the people are. But you know, but they're great companies, right? They have big budgets and, like, you know, beautiful projects and everything. But if we zoom closer a little bit towards Europe, you're gonna see also some good companies, which are probably misspelled Zizut, but it's just Digig or Macavision and UPP from Prague, also doing great projects. And if you look at the right corner, we're right there. We're Jews. And you know, we're also doing projects. And usually the projects that we are doing, they're not so different from those other guys. The only difference is that we really have to struggle to make them work, because we don't have those budgets and shit. So, we are a small studio. We consider ourselves to be a small studio. I don't know how much you know about Jews, but you know, we're made to small. We run about 70 people scattered around Warsaw, Wrocław, which is Breslau when Germans took it, and Tokyo, and a little bit of a small venue in Hamburg as well. So instead of talking about what we do, I'm going to show you random stuff for a few minutes. You're going to see a random pieces of our work, and then we're going to go to the main point of the presentation, all right? So, you know, let's start with this tired guy. Oh, look at that.
Okay, so as Adam said, we do work for the studio. And you know, whenever we came to any conference, I always love people who are super prepared for their presentations. I really admire. Because whenever I come, I have this like, I'm meeting everyday people who are selling stuff that I want to use in the presentation. So it's like never-ending story for me. So for example, yesterday I was standing in the lobby of the hotel and there was two guys talking with Victor Hugo. I don't know if you know Victor, I love him. He's one of my favorite people. And they were saying to him, Victor, we love what you are doing. Well, not to love, what's not to love. And they said something really important. They said, because you can do what you love to do, you can do all those characters, and we work for the studio, so someone tells us what to do. When I'm the producer, so I'm on the other side, I'm telling other people what they have to do, and I'm making the decision for them. So it looks a bit like that. I'm on the left side, and then we have those 70 people on the right side, and we have to make decisions of which projects to take, which projects not to take, if we'll get money from them, or if it's gonna means overtime and weekends, and etc., etc. So it always comes to the question, what can we lose on projects like that? And beside the obvious that I already spoke with, there is an opinion. You know, every company, every person, every artist, we have our own opinion that the market knows us or we are getting there. But basically, we want people to think about us in a certain way. And then when we are coming to the certain kind of projects, there is always question like if they will still think about us as a cool studio, as great artists, or will this project change something? And this is something that we had to face when we were working on 2 projects for the public sector, which basically means for the government. I don't know, do you know what's the story right now in Poland in terms of government? It's not fun. But beside that, you know, doing political projects is always tricky because as people, we love to have opinions about politics. Most of us know nothing about it. I know nothing about it, but we like to have opinions. It's this kind of topic. So when they came to us, we had to ask ourselves, like, you know, is it worth it? Like, will it change something for Jews? Will it change something for our artists? And the other side of the working for the public sector, and I don't know how many of you have a chance for it, but those are super tough clients to work with. Like super, super hard to work with. This is the script that we got from them. This was 1 page for 5 minutes movie. So this was what we were starting with. And beside that, this project the first project that we will be talking about took 1.5 years, and 8 months of it was the storyboards and animatic. We've done 60 versions of storyboards, because over the time, the board of the institute that we were working for changed 3 times. So every time it changed, the new people came, they had new approach to the topic. And what's interesting, we were talking about the history. So you would think, it's history, it should be, you know, everybody knows sort of the same history. No. So, yeah, so 1.5 years, half of it just storyboarding, animating, 60 versions of storyboards, really shitty budget, like really shitty budget. Like when I know budgets, this was like really bad. So why did we do it? We've decided to do it. Plus working for government, which, you know, this is like, I think that the main reason was Jews as a company, we are from Poland, but we don't really work on the Polish market. So it didn't bother us that much that, you know, we're gonna do it for Polish market. There will be a there will be opinions and comments, etc., from the Polish market, of course, that we've done it. But we are not there really, so we didn't really care that much what people will tell about us in Poland. Plus, we get to do really, really amazing project, because they had a lot of opinions about the history itself, but they didn't really had too much input in terms of creative side. That's how I look, guys. They didn't push us too much in terms of creative side, so we had a really free hand to do whatever we felt like and show them our approach to the story. And that was an opportunity for us to give our artists the field to, you know, really creatively show themselves what they want to do, how they feel the subject, etc. So that's what we came for. I don't know how to switch it on. Well,
you click twice.
He's the technical one. I'm the money one.
So that's the film that we're talking about. I think it should play, or at least that was the plan.
Nobody thought the war and its effects would last half a century for Poland. First, Germany attacks. Then Soviet Russia. We don't give up, despite being left on our own. We create an underground state, complete with a government, an army, schools, and courts. We suffer 2 occupations. The Germans murder millions of Polish civilians. The Soviets deport Poles in cattle cars to gulags in the east. They shoot over 20,000 officers during the Katyn massacre. And hundreds of thousands of Poles are forced into slave labor in the inhuman lands of the Soviet Union. Our army is reborn, moving west, where our soldiers are already fighting alongside the Allies. We conquer Monte Cassino. Our fighters wreak havoc and fear by air too. The Germans call us Black Devils as we crush their resistance. Paratroopers make their way to occupied Poland to support the underground state, while our counterintelligence acquires secret plans of the enemy. There are Poles who save Jews despite the threat of the death penalty. We create resistance movements, even within the German concentration camps. We are the first to alert the world about the Holocaust. Though politics appear to be more important than human lives. And nobody listens to us. Polish Jews fight the Germans in the Warsaw Ghetto without even a chance for success. Our nation comes up from the underground and fights in the Warsaw Uprising. We break the German Enigma code, saving millions of lives. But in exchange for all that we do, we are betrayed. The free world distances itself from us, leaving us behind the Iron Curtain. Despite our scars from the war, we still resist. The Pope gives us strength. Workers' strikes spread throughout Poland. The communists lose. The Iron Curtain falls. The war is over. We prevail. Because we do not beg for freedom, we fight for it.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna be more on the positive side because yeah, the budgets are shit and the client is shit, and but at least it's creative, right? So, so what are we dealing with here? So we don't have a triangle. Forget about the triangle. Like the triangle doesn't exist with those projects. But when there's no triangle really, like, you know, what is cool about those projects is that you actually have to think, because like there's no reason on this earth to do those projects, you know, like per se. It's just like, you know, everything doesn't work. So like, you know, if you're one of those companies that I was speaking to you before, like the mill and everything, you have all the resources to like, you know, build your own, you know, cool cars and everything, right? They have those. And like, you know, do all this crazy shit, and that's great because when you have a pile of cash to burn, you can experiment, you can do all this crazy kind of cool shit, and you can't do that with those projects. But at least you have to use your mind in order to figure something out, and this is where we are coming back to the roots. So Juice originated from design. We're a design company that evolved into a post-production company. So, so whatever we do in those sort of projects, we try to approach it from a design perspective. So obviously this is not going to be a, you know, a big thing, but we start with a look frame which looks awkward on this screen. But basically, you start with design. It's nothing unusual. The thing is, we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we approach it and really put as little people on it and spend as little money on it as possible and make it as look good as possible, right? It's not to use the word cool because that was from the previous presentation. So this is what we came up with, and we were like, right away when we saw it was like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, that's good. Like, it's all silhouetted, and you can't see stuff, you can't see faces. We're maybe gonna go, go away with without using her, and maybe we're not gonna have to do any dramatic stuff into the architecture. So, so that seemed like a good idea. Obviously, like CG people always tend to say, like, we're going to the supervisors, and the supervisor says, like, yeah, it's Photoshop. What can I cannot do that. And it's like, yeah, sure, man. We're gonna have to figure it out. But whenever we do stylized content, because stylization of the animation is always like the best way to go if you don't have the money, you have to stylize. You have to figure out something. So, so you always go to V-Ray, right? Like, V-Ray is a good way to do it. And I know there's a total chaos behind you guys, and like this is politically correct to speak about V-Ray. But I like to give credit when credit is due. V-Ray is actually the best program to render stuff specifically for visually rich content. And if I don't have to be politically correct. Like, is there any people from Autodesk in here? Okay, no. So so we work in Autodesk, of course, because like we don't have this pile of cash, so we cannot afford to write our own software. And if and I sympathize with Autodesk. I mean, their programs are great and everything. It's just that, like with all the normal programs, you have to learn to go from A to Z, right? Like, in Photoshop, you open layers, it's A to Z. And in Autodesk, it's just like A, then minimize the window, open the task, and like, open it up again, move around, go behind the computer, dance, and then you get to the Z, otherwise it doesn't work. So. And I sympathize with the guys, seriously, because like, if you imagine that they wrote the software in 1996, you have to imagine what's inside this software. Like, like those guys, and the learning curve for the software is pretty shitty, right? Because, like, but you have to sympathize with that stuff, because those guys, they're going to work like in Autodesk. You imagine that this software was written way before some of the guys here were born. So the guys go to work every day in Autodesk, and basically they see this. And I'll go fucking crazy, but they do this stuff. So really, Autodesk be strong. But V-Ray is actually a really good software, hands down. So like coming back, we're trying to figure out on how do we approach this. So. We first of all, like, the designs were cool, right? So like we say, okay, so how do we do that in a real life? Then we found this guy, and one of our art directors, which I want to say the name, Andrzej Sikut. You might ask me for his name, amazing guy. He was finding reference for it in the physical world, and he bumped into this stuff, and that was exactly what we needed, because it's done physically in camera, and it has the atmospherics, it has the silhouetted people, and it looks cool. So it means like, we don't have a lot of work, and it's physically possible to really do it. So we start breaking up those images, right? So we got into, the gradients, obviously, like the strong color. We figure out a way on how to really bring detail only to close plans. Blow as much atmosphere on the whole thing as possible to cover all the mistakes, and then add the brush strokes. The brush stroke didn't work, it was too hard. So we did everything else. So it was coming across all the pictures here, right? Then, we found some more pictures, because we thought, okay, this is a historical content, maybe we're gonna do it black and white, right? No, we tried to bring color to it. So the first photos that we found that were like actually relevant and had this sort of feeling. So like if you look at this is a perfect example of what we did for Enigma, and the top one is pretty much where the Germans were, right? So we tried to figure out the color code, and we used mainly 3 colors. Because it made sense, because Mr. Stalin already, took the red one. That's his favorite. And hold on, let me go here. So the Stalin took the red one, so we gave the green one to the Germans, and then we were right in the middle with whatever color, and but a little bit brighter. And then we found the Limbo game and the Insect. I don't know if any of you played that game. If you never did, you should. You should, because hands down, this is the best games that, I know that Ubisoft people are here as well. This is hands down the best game that was ever created by a Danish company called Playdead, I guess. Amazing stuff, very inspiring. So if any of you want some inspiration, that's the shit. You play that. It's 6 hours long. It's really like everybody can afford that. So basically, we went into the process, right? So we started with the concept, top left. We really put the light in, and if you can see that, this is all a trick. Like, there's nothing interesting in that scene. Like, seriously, like, we even didn't bother to do a good models. Like, it's really nothing. It's just like, so, but the light and the atmospherics really does the trick, and you're gonna see that across the whole fucking thing. So, if you're gonna go here, you're gonna have the same thing. You go from the concept to R&D, like, let's shade and light. But yeah, okay. So this is with Mr. Stalin's version, but we had to change it because it's a Polish tank. But that's another thing, that if you work with with the public client, with the governmental client, you're gonna get that a lot. So for example, for them, changing a tank is like, hey, yeah, we should change it to T66. No, T78. No, it's like it's a third version. I don't know the tanks. I'm just telling you the numbers. So it's like. It's just like, just changing the tank. For us, it's like, okay, we have to model another one. Oh, yeah, we have to model another one.
And there's no something like, yeah, but we approved it. And they are like, yeah, but it's not accurate. It's historically accurate. Even if the tank is like this small and nobody will notice it, they have to be historically accurate. And this is really funny because when it comes to the projects like that, they're very particular and certain about some stuff, and then very loose on the other. So, for example, with the tanks, as Adam said, was like we were changing the tanks, and the same was with the planes. Like they had to be, all the names on it, colors, everything had to be like exactly the same. And then we came to the scene where, again, I don't know how much you guys know about the Polish history, but when we came to after the Second World War, we were fighting for the freedom, and there was a guy, Lech Wałęsa, who was quite important for our history, but he's in opposite to the current political scene. And it's like everybody knows that he was a huge part of it. He was one of the main people behind the
collapse of the Iron Curtain. Yeah.
And then he has this very particular mustache. So it's really hard not to tell who he is. So the client actually asked us to show him from behind.
Yeah. So that's another trick that you get when you're working for government. So the government changed, and all of a sudden Wałęsa guy who got a Nobel Prize and he's probably one of the authors of the Iron Curtain falling, he's not so good with our current government. He's sort of competing with our guys. So so he had to go. And that's something that we're not proud of, but you can see here, we can see him from behind only. That's him with no mustache on the back of his head. But the Iron Curtain still falls, right? Yeah, but coming back to the technical hurdles, because we can go on forever. But look at this, this is pure shit. So this is the renders, there's nothing there. So this is the render, that's the diffuse. You turn on the atmospherics, and you get out with a nice image, right? And really, you put a couple of, I can bet you 60% of this film was done by 3 people. Really, because there was no other way. And the same here. So you can't see that on the screen, but really the geometry of the trees and everything is basically it's a joke. So so at the same time, but this is this is doing something smart. This is I like it. I sympathize with that stuff. I like doing something smart, because you're gonna be in the NPC world. You're gonna get 50 guys in, and they're gonna model all the butterflies and and the forests and whatnot, and that's great. That's great. We're gonna have another Avengers, and that's great. But but here you have to deal with the stuff, and you have to be smart. So whatever you do stuff in CG, especially when you have to do stuff, with a limited budget, try to figure out the way. It's always the budgets are gonna be always an issue, especially in the world of not the big companies. So you have to figure out the way, and the smarter you get into that stuff, the better. And on the positive side, because there's another positive side of those projects, because Natalia is going to probably talk about some negatives in a second, but so the positive side, is the metaphor. And that's something that you're not gonna get from the yogurt client, let's say. Like, we're doing all those car commercials and everything. It's like, it's supposed to be cool and you're driving around with the BMW, that's great. But, usually it's a very literal thing. Like, you have to be cool, there's a horse and the guy on the horse, and then there's a BMW, and here we actually, you can play around. You can play around with story. So that's advantage. Like, you can use that towards your advantage. So we had another film coming our way, and that was coming
a year after, I think.
What?
Year after the first one.
Yeah, like year after the first one, but it was coming from Kaczynski's brother. I don't know if you know Kaczynski's. This is a very controversial name. Like, we had this president that was flying to Russia, and then he decided to crash with half of the government on board. So there are actually two of them. They're twins. Like, and this is no joke. This is no Bond movie. We had actually prime minister and the president being twins. And so the evil twin, the second guy, he's right now in charge. So the late President Institute, carrying that name, was running the show on this film that we're gonna show you in a second. The thing is, everybody was like, yeah, we shouldn't be doing that. That's what Kaczynski is. Yeah, it's like, it's supposed to be about 100 years of Poland coming to independence before what we just show you in the first film. So, but we said, okay, let's try to approach it with the metaphor. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about those metaphors, but for now I'm gonna play you the movie. And the pity is the guy is not here who can switch off the lights so we can actually see that a little bit better on that screen. But I'm gonna do that anyways. Oh, we had a nice thing, but I skipped it because we don't have time anyways. Let's watch the film.
To rise. The recent provocative maneuvers near the border cause fear for the continuation of the peace process. Subsequent bombings have contributed to chaos spreading in the city. The number of wounded in civilian areas is rising. The resolution of the conflict seems to be less likely due to the lack of political will on both sides of the conflict. Agreement seems less likely with each subsequent attack. The international community appears to
the end.
Thank you. I just will, before Adam will go further, it was really emotional project also because the director, Martin, who was directing this project, his dog just died, and the dog that you can see in the beginning is actually Fiona, his dog that she was with him for 12 years. So it's, it's always nice. Well, it was cool that we could input her in any way to the project creatively.
Yeah. That was one hell of a project, and I wanted to show you. I don't know how that stuff works over here. I'd love to show you that stuff, but I don't know if I'm going to be able, especially that our time runs out. But basically, if you look at the story that we did there, it has nothing to do. I mean, it has something to do with the history, but basically, it's not big on history, right? So, so if you look at like the guy coming over to the Cape with no head, that's like a symbol of Poland not having a king during that time. And then if you, because of our super place in Europe, like if you look at the three hands taking apart the crown, that's when Prussia, Russia, and Germany just basically divided the country and took it for themselves. And when you look at the guy falling down from the Cape, which is, by the way, in the shape of Poland country while we were, at that stage, you see the bars closing in, and each of the bar is really shape of what the Prussia, Russian, and the other guys were taking. So, and then you fall down through the cave, and then you see those sculptures on the sides of the cave, and this is the sculpture from authors from that era in Poland history, which were like trying to influence us for the independence. So, like if you look at that film, it doesn't really carry a lot of like historical values per se. Like if you look at it and you're from let's say Spain for that matter, like you don't care. Like there's some nice pictures on it, but there's a lot of depth to it, and we had we could play around with it, and that's always a lot of fun. So again, like if you have such projects, if you do stuff like that, if you try to be like low budget, figure out a way to work it towards your stylize, and try to work it towards your advantage. And the last thing, because we're not going to be able to tell everything, and we know that we knew that we're going to be over the time. So the artists are crucial. So no viewer is going to do the work for you, and we just learned that because we're just doing the prequel. By the way, that's another public project, and we're talking about the public projects per se only today. We're doing it right now, and we learned because we had all these rules set up, like we knew how we model and how we animate and how we light and render the project, the first project that we showed you, and we said, okay, we have a prequel to that one. We're just gonna give it to the junior team, right? So, V-Ray is great. It's not gonna do the job for you. So, like, you need to have a good artist behind it. I'm gonna show you. It's a subtle change, but you're gonna see. This is the old one, right? That's what I already showed you. But so this is how our lights will look like. But then we're gonna go to the new one right after that, which is a similar shot. It's just like it's coming from the new film. It looks, it looks okay. But if you look at the spectacle of details of how the forest looks like, the lightning play and everything, it's just weaker. So as I say, like, by the end of the day, all the tools are the tools, and Photoshop really changed over the course of the last 20 years. It's just the same tool that used to be. The same gonna be with V-Ray and every other software, but the artist behind the software is the key. So like you can have an artist that is coming into the office, and he's an amazing junior, and he puts out amazing pictures because he's just talented. It doesn't matter if he uses this one or that one. It's just a tool. So by the end of the day, it's all a talent. I'm gonna show you another one, shitty one. This is actually a nice concept that was made, and it was turned into what I think was shitty shot, but what can I say? We did it, so I have to say it's okay, but it's not. So, so the artists are crucial. And yeah, I guess that's it because it says 0.
Artists are crucial and stylized. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. So we're gonna click. This is always.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.